Attention, your paradigm is about to shift at the intersection of fact and reason. You're entering Kingston Country.
I'm Dan Kingston, and you're listening to the Dan Kingston Podcast. Dr. Jerome Corsi holds a PhD from Harvard University in political science and has written many books and articles, including his latest, Silent No More, How I Became a Political Prisoner of Mueller's Witch Hunt. Dr. Corsi, welcome.
Good to be with you. Thank you very much, Dan.
You're described often as a political conspiracy theorist. Why do you think that is?
That's what the left calls anybody who is exposing their socialist tendencies or their corruption. It's an attempt to discredit or to demonize your writing so no one will read you or follow you. That's what it is, and it's basically disinformation that the left has decided they can use to silence or censor or limit the reach of Christians and conservatives.
How would you describe your politics then?
Well, I'm both Christian and conservative, and so my politics have largely been to support Donald Trump, which I've strongly done, and of course that's going to put you right at odds with the mainstream media and the hard left, who are determined to destroy Trump and to remove him from office if they can.
Now, are you more of a Republican or a Trump supporter, if you had to pick one?
Well, I mean, I don't consider myself, I'm a member, I think, of the Constitution Party. That's how I'm registered to vote. And I've never really considered myself to be a Republican. I think I've criticized the GOP establishment pretty strongly for its centrist tendencies, the Washington deep state, getting rich, going to Washington, not pursuing strong conservative policies. So I think if you take a look at the Republicans over the past 20 or 30 years, they have not been typically conservatives. You've got Ronald Reagan, who was conservative, and Donald Trump, who is certainly implementing a lot of policies that I think are consistent with a conservative and Christian agenda, and fighting hard against this deep state. The Democrats seem to me now to be openly socialist. I think it's more of a social democratic, or democratic socialist party. And I think the Democrats will probably soon embrace that name and that title because that's who they are.
On the front page of the Drudge Report, it says, more potential whistleblowers are contacting Congress. I wanted to ask you, Doctor, why is the Drudge Report turning on Trump?
I don't know what the motivation is. I've been asked that, and I just can't, I can't speculate as to why Drudge has changed. I just know that Drudge, maybe something in his personal life, I just don't really know. Drudge is not very communicative about his personal life or his inner thoughts. I just know that he has now gotten to embrace the hate Trump agenda, and I find his news aggregation is now increasingly tilted towards the left, just like Fox News itself. So Drudge, I think, is certainly for people like myself less and less useful. I'm going to The Liberty Daily, which I think is a much better conservative aggregator of news. It's thelibertydaily.com. And Drudge, it's unfortunate. He had played a great role even in supporting Donald Trump through 2016, but given his current stance, I think Drudge is going to lose much of what was his core audience.
There's all this outrage, bipartisan outrage over the troop withdrawal, a small number of troops being withdrawn from northeastern Syria, a territory held by the Kurds. Why does Congress and mainstream media, and it seems like everybody, they want war with Turkey over this?
It's hard to figure. I mean, I think the basic premise, I've always said that war in the Middle East is the problem, not the solution. I've never been a hawk in terms of wanting to go to war. We tend to get into these wars. I think Trump is right, and they become endless wars. I mean, what have we accomplished in Afghanistan in 18 years? The Taliban is still there, and we have more heroin poppy being produced out of Afghanistan now than ever. So I don't see that we really achieved. These are fights and battles in the Middle East that have been going on for 2,000 years. And if there's legitimate U.S. interests, I can see us being involved in military action. But even in the wars which Israel has fought, we provided technical and logistical support, but we have not provided troops. And this whole idea of the Syrian involvement, it was supposed to be just a 30-day involvement, and now it's years later. I mean, this is what happens consistently in the Middle East. And a large group of people think that, we can solve all these problems with war. I mean, the Kurds fought with us, and certainly I have political sympathy with the Kurds, but the Kurds have existed in 3 or 4 countries, in Iraq, in Iran, in Turkey, Syria. They've been since the end of World War I, they've wanted to form Kurdistan, and it's never happened. I mean, these fights go back hundreds of years.
Are the Kurds defenseless? I mean, I obviously they're not, but it seems like there's all this spin in the media that they're going to be completely annihilated. When what's happening, obviously, I have sympathy too, what's happening, but they're by no means defenseless, are they?
Well, I don't think so, but again, what about the Christians who are being massacred in Nigeria? Should we go into Nigeria and save them? I mean, I think it's appalling. The massacres and genocides of Christians going on in the Middle East, yet you don't see public outcry that we need to have military action to defend Christians in these countries where they're obviously being persecuted. We can't. I think George Washington had a point in his farewell address that we just can't always be assumed to be the policeman of the world. Some of these conflicts, as tragic as they are simply not within our purview to solve or to get involved in. Yeah. And I think this tendency to want to go to war. Wars are easy to start; they're hard to finish.
So why, you mentioned the deep state. Is the deep state and the NSA, how are they responsible for influencing foreign policy and keeping us in, these endless wars?
Well, I mean, the deep state, I think, is what I identify as the deep state, is a group of bureaucrats who are holdovers largely from Clinton and Obama. But the bureaucracy is recruited largely from the elite schools, and it's a beltway operation, which Georgetown and other schools of that nature influence very heavily. So they come in with this globalist agenda, this internationalism that you've seen since the end of World War II, that we need the United Nations and we need the European Union. I think clearly it's an unelected group of officials in a bureaucracy. Right. Same problem we've got in the EU. There's no definition of the bureaucracy in the Constitution. Right. It's a fourth branch of government, and it begins making policy. They have rules and regulations which laws are written to allow the bureaucrats to write, and the bureaucrats end up writing the effective rules and regulations which become the laws.
Doctor, let me ask you something. Does the rise of this deep state kind of coincide with the rise of the executive branch following World War II? Is there a competition for power over this fourth branch, you call it?
Well, I think we've been warned about this since Eisenhower in his farewell address. He called it the military-industrial complex. The original draft of the speech was going to call it a military-industrial government complex. The bureaucracy, the CIA, the NSA, as it was created. I mean, the FBI and the Department of Justice, the Internal Revenue Service were all weaponized under Obama. Look at the IRS and its denial of applications for tax deferred status to Tea Party groups. These are all well documented. And again, when the bureaucracy engages in this type of rulemaking, very few in the bureaucracy are ever in any way indicted. Their behavior is excused, and the entrenched employees become protected by civil service. They last administration after administration. Their careers are decades long. I think there should be term limits in the bureaucracy. I think we should move the bureaucracy out of Washington. Locate them in places where people don't want to go. I mean, you want to have service to the State Department, put it in Nome, Alaska. It'll be closer to Russia and to China. It'll be put the Department of Justice in the Mojave Desert. I mean, these are things that would get rid of thousands of employees who would refuse to leave the Beltway.
Wasn't Obama himself a victim of the deep state in some sense, or was he not?
I don't think so. I mean, I think Obama perpetrated the deep state. He was one of the people who did the most to move it in a post-American direction, viewing the Constitution as outmoded, that we could do a much better job if we eliminated God and if we embraced the cultural values of the hard left. And so even in terms of I don't know if Obama had a religion, but he certainly culturally was raised in Islam as a child growing up in Indonesia. So I think you see fundamental shifts in traditional U.S. values that Obama introduced and were reflected in this post-American globalized, one new world order that so has entranced the U.S. bureaucracy.
What do you think of Julian Assange?
Well, I think Julian Assange, under the constitutional court decisions, especially the New York Times v. U.S., the Pentagon Papers case, Julian Assange, I think, had a right to publish the Democrat emails, even if they were stolen. There's no indication. He was not indicted for anything regarding the 2016 election. The indictment that Assange had was based on the Chelsea Manning case, which goes back to, I believe, 2010. And Assange was not indicted initially for releasing or for publishing the various cables and other diplomatic material that Chelsea Manning stole. So Manning also, by the way, had a sentence commuted by President Obama. So this was such a serious crime, releasing government secrets, stealing them. Why did Obama commute the sentence of Manning? And why, in so many years later, is the Justice Department going to seek to punish Assange? The Justice Department indictment suggested that Assange helped Manning to crack some code words, some passwords. But if you really read what the indictment says, the indictment makes it clear that Assange was unable to crack any passwords. That's not what Assange does. So he did not, in fact, help Manning steal any of the documents that he published. I think that's very important.
I want to go back to the NSA because it seems to me that the NSA, is listening to the President of the United States, and that has to go back further than Obama.
Well, the NSA, if we go back to Snowden and the other whistleblowers, has, I think, gone completely beyond its mandate. I think it's illegally taping virtually every electronic transmission in the United States, maybe globally, and has the power to save it forever. Yeah. Now, we get the face recognition technology in place, and the NSA will be able to monitor every place a person goes, everything a person does, and to put it on permanent record, to be searched at any later date. This I think is an extreme intrusion on the Fourth Amendment, and will fundamentally change American society so that we could easily become totalitarian, and we could easily have a social score, a social worth score.
Like in China.
Like in China. And this, again, I think we need to expose the NSA, and one of the reasons I believe that Assange and others who are releasing government secrets really are heroes is because I don't think the government should, with the exception of very, very limited amounts of information, have secrets at all. You don't want somebody stealing and publishing the location of troops or things of that nature, but I do think, in general, policy information should not be held secret.
You got to hold off. I mean, the UFO stuff, I think they should hold that, maybe potentially some of that. But in all seriousness, the NSA seems to have like a revolving door in that they send their NSA officials over to CNN in the mainstream media. It is like NSA official or former NSA attorney or something like that. I wonder.
Well, many of the agencies do. I mean, CNN has gotten many of. It's shocking how many of the bureaucracy are leftist, and even Wall Street. And CNN is recruited very widely from all these groups. And increasingly, even Fox has a left leaning. Fox itself is not nearly as conservative as it was. But I think these are tendencies and trends which are we're fighting to get America back to the fundamental values of limited government and respect for the Constitution.
Right. It
seems like the left wants to rewrite these globalists, feel like the Constitution is in their way, and they want to get rid of it.
Whenever the Constitution gets in the way, then you can just discard it, I guess, when it's convenient. I want to get into your book a little bit. On March 22nd, NSA attorney and CNN regular Susan Hennessy tweeted that you're the luckiest man in the world. Do you know? Are you familiar with Susan Hennessy?
No, I don't know even who she is.
Well, she's on CNN today, but she wrote that, and she wrote in capitals that you leaked a draft plea indictment, and she adds in that tweet, for Mueller's office just to pack up shop and allow that to stand feels pretty wild. And I guess my question, why is Susan Hennessy and all these people going after you?
Well, I don't even know who she is. I mean, Mueller, basically, I went in to work with Mueller on an honest basis. I gave them my laptop computers, my backup devices, everything, my cell phones, my email accounts. And then they immediately ask you a question, and they say, well, that disagrees with this email that you wrote in July 2016. I said, well, I forgot that email. So immediately they play this perjury trap game. And at the end of it, they wanted me to connect Roger Stone to Assange. In July and August 2016, it was our 25th wedding anniversary. We were in Italy. I had some time to think, and I realized that Assange had Podesta's emails. Now, no one told me that. I had no contact with Assange or WikiLeaks. I just basically figured it out or intuitively came to that conclusion, connected the dots, and I told various people, including Roger Stone. So monitoring all my communications, which the government was, even in July 2016, evidently, that Mueller's prosecutors were convinced I had to have had contact with Assange and that I had to have connected Roger Stone to Assange. That would have been their collusion link. So Roger Stone could have influenced Assange to tell him when to release these emails that he had on Podesta that were so detrimental to Hillary's campaign, except it never happened. And so finally, when I refused to lie or give Mueller the information he wanted me to say, I wouldn't do it. They produced this plea deal, and plea deal was my first day's testimony, not acknowledging that I had amended that testimony when I realized I had forgotten some emails. I basically told Mueller to take a hike. I wasn't going to swear to a judge I committed a crime I didn't commit, and I released that plea deal. I wanted the world to see it, see how in fact Mueller had been essentially, and I think Giuliani is exactly right, Greg Jarrett discusses it in his current book, Witch Hunt, that Mueller was trying to suborn perjury by getting me to lie, to swear I had willfully misled Mueller and read a statement before a judge that would have given Mueller evidence of collusion with WikiLeaks and Roger Stone. It just wasn't true. I wasn't going to do it. And I never did get indicted. I think that that validates that Mueller was really being the one who was crooked, I think criminal. That's prosecutorial misconduct. You can't force a person to tell what they want, what the prosecutors want you to say, if it's a lie.
Did you watch his testimony? It almost looked like he was there was something wrong with him.
Well, Mueller may have been dissembling, trying to say, "Look, I'm old. I didn't know everything." I mean, that's good defense when he might be indicted.
It's an act.
And it could very well be an act. It doesn't matter. He was the head. He was the guy with the responsibility. Now, if he was suffering mental incompetence or problems with his mind, he should have resigned. But if he stayed in the position, he was responsible for everything that prosecutorial team did. He's in charge. The buck stops there. That's where he can't just say, "Well, I didn't know about that." Well, then you're negligent. It was your job and duty, Mr. Mueller, to know everything that was going on.
Right.
And there was plenty of it being reported in the newspapers. I certainly, in Thanksgiving 2018, when I decided I was not going to take the plea deal, as I write in this book, Silent No More, I went very, very public, gave lots of interviews, and made it very clear what Mueller was doing inside this investigation, which I thought was criminal on Mueller's part.
It doesn't even look like he was in charge of the thing. I mean, unless it was an act.
I don't know, but I mean, Mueller, I think, in that testimony also committed perjury because he said he was not applying for the job of director when the meeting he had with President Trump after Comey was fired. And it appears from the information that the White House has that, in fact, that's exactly what Mueller was doing. He was applying to be director of the FBI, and Trump turned him down. The next day, Rosenstein appointed him to be special counsel. The whole thing, I think, was, it stinks, and I'm waiting to see now what the the Horowitz report on the FISA court abuse and the investigation being conducted by Barr and Durham. I think these guys have got to produce indictments, or the American people will perhaps forever lose trust in our justice system.
Around that time that Mueller's going after you, there seems to be a fallout with the InfoWars situation with Alex Jones. What happened what was your experience like at InfoWars?
Well, again, I've sued them, so I'm not going to go into any detail on that. I mean, I filed suit against InfoWars and Alex Jones for comments they made about me that I thought were, libelous and detrimental to my career and standing. So there was clearly a fallout, but I'm reluctant to talk about it while there's litigation.
Fair enough. And last question, is politics ever going back to how it was before? Or are we forever in a changed environment now?
I don't know. I mean, politics has, if you look at it with a long historical view, we're probably going through a similar phase that ancient Rome went through in a post-Republican stage when after Caesar was killed and murdered, assassinated, and Rome struggled moving from a republic into more of an emperor rule, dictatorship as it were, where the Senate was much less influential. And I see similarities between what we're going through, which is, I think, a far less in terms of the loftiness of our politics. But again, every era has had its problems. I mean, politics by its nature is contentious. The Civil War was a period where America was deeply divided. World War I and World War II, we had no enthusiasm for fighting. And these various periods of our time have been very contentious in the politics. What we're facing right now, I think, is particularly significant because we could become a socialist country. Donald Trump, I think, says that we will never be one, but with the creeping socialism that the Democrats seem to, I've just done an ebook and a podcast on Amazon where I've said, Dr. Corsi investigates why the Democratic Party has gone communist, and I think they are going communist. That's a fundamental shift, and one that I think, if it occurs, would be the downfall of the United States, and it would ruin us economically and throw us into a totalitarian state. All of these, people say, well, the Nazis were fascists. They were on the right. The Nazis were National Socialists. They were on the left. They just disagreed with the communists in terms of issues of, who owns private property and who controls decisions concerning production and the economy. But they were socialists. The Nazis were socialists, and the totalitarian nature of these governments I see being repeated again in Antifa and the universities, which are producing students who really have no understanding of the First Amendment or the Fourth Amendment or the Second Amendment, and are really very intolerant of anybody's views who disagree with them. These are very dangerous trends, and I think we're at a critical crossroads in our history as to whether we will keep or abandon the Constitution. I think that's the challenge of our current age.
Dr. Jerome Corsi. Go buy his book, Silent No More, How I Became a Political Prisoner of Mueller's Witch Hunt, and your ebook. Where can they find your ebook?
It's on Amazon.com, and it's called Dr. Corsi Investigates Why the Democratic Party Has Gone Communist.
Thank you for being on the podcast, Doctor.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Kingston Country. You've been listening to the Dan Kingston Podcast.